In the Huddle was created to give student athletes, parents and coaches an inside look at the journey through US college sport and all that comes with it. The demands, the experiences, the excitement and the opportunities available to our student athletes from around the world. Study and Play USA facilitates a comprehensive, customised approach for student athletes and families for their whole journey, from their high school preparation years right through to US college graduation.
You'll be hearing a lot from Chris and Claire moving forward as they discuss the hot topics in college recruiting they come across on a daily basis. This includes common questions, scenarios, and potential barriers faced by student athletes along this process. This is all about getting straight to the point. If Chris and Claire could get all recruits across Australia in one room, this is what we would want to tell them. For those of you who don't know, Chris and Claire are two of our talent coordinators who assist with the coach communication process of the recruiting journey.
Okay, so let's rip in. I am going to throw a few scenarios at you guys, and that'll be from the perspective of a student athlete, a parent, or a coach. So first one, as a student athlete, I say to you, I can't compete because I've got too much schoolwork.
Yeah, that's a good one to start with. I might take this one, Claire. That's a big red flag, really, when we hear a student athlete say that, because coaches will also see that as a big red flag. So I'm sure, Claire, you'll agree with me here that coaches don't really have a great understanding of our system here, our education system. All they know is they've got something in their hands that they potentially are going to offer, which is pretty valuable for a student athlete here in Australia. So they don't understand why someone wouldn't be trying to get the best out of themselves in competition to try and, earn that reward, which is obviously a scholarship over to the US. So they don't understand that the education system in Australia is probably a little bit harder than what they're used to over there as well. So a little bit of a red flag to a coach or to us as well if a student athlete is saying that. So if a student athlete did that to us, we would actually just talk about the importance of coaches seeing that you're competing. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to be winning everything, but the fact that you're competing and you're an athlete, that's giving them confidence that you're going to handle the day-to-day rigors of being a student and athlete in the US. So certainly not something we recommend saying to a coach. I'm having a bit of a break because I've got a bit of schoolwork. And if you say that, it can sometimes impact your opportunities you might be receiving.
So this is one from a US college coach. So coach says, "Hey Claire, I have reached out to Christine and she hasn't replied for over 4 days. I assume she's not interested."
So this might sound ridiculous for people not living in America. However, coaches have scholarship offers in their power, like you were just saying, Chris, and they have deadlines to meet and rosters to fill. There's hundreds of student athletes every day emailing these coaches, WhatsApping these coaches. So if a coach doesn't hear from you, they'll just move on.
That's right.
And they'll move on to hundreds of other people in their inbox or in their messages.
Yeah.
So when it's the other way around, if a coach has not replied for 4 days, that does not necessarily mean that they are not interested, because they have to deal with day-to-day coaching, recruiting, traveling, compliance, admin, dealing with their athletic directors, and obviously their own personal lives.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. I think the big thing there is, I think they've got a little bit similar to the previous scenario. They've got something there that is very valuable, and you need to respect that and you realize that you're in a lot of competition with other athletes. So 3 or 4 days before you respond may send the wrong message.
So this is one from a parent, guys. So parents are heavily involved in this process naturally and can sometimes want to help out a student athlete. So a parent will say to you, "To save my daughter some time during her HSC, which is really stressful, I'm going to reply to coaches on her behalf."
So Chris and I have talked about this a lot. This is a lose-lose situation for sure, because first of all, coaches want to get to know the student athlete themselves. And I've seen it happen when a parent has replied to a coach
in the email address of their kid, but there's information that they have not included or forgotten to include because they're not actually the student athlete themselves.
Yeah, and I think just for those listening and watching, HSC, is the final year educational system in New South Wales. Sorry, so every state's got their own equivalent. So we're talking about year 12 here, but yeah, ultimately, I think my response to that situation is this is, for a student athlete coming along this journey, this pathway, this is very much a personal development pathway. So as much as it is about trying to get an entry into the US system and ideally scholarship and this wonderful right fit, there's also things these kids are learning along the way, which is communication skills and how to communicate with adults on the other side of the world and adults on this side as well. Time management, and these are two pretty important pillars for success anyway in the pathway. So whilst we understand why any parent might do that and they feel like it's actually probably inhibiting their personal development, which is really what this pathway is about as well.
So this is another one from a parent's perspective. When they reach out to you and say, so my son is only talking to coaches from no-name colleges. Why would we send him overseas to schools like these when we have such reputable universities here in Australia?
Can I take this one, Claire? Firstly, okay, so this is something that does happen, and again, understandable. We live in a pretty amazing country here, and we do have a relatively small number of universities, but most of them are very reputable and great universities. And student athletes or students who decide to stay here, they're going to be okay. But I guess what we're talking about here is firstly coming back to why do I want to go to college? Am I going to college in America to go to a name college, or am I going there for all these other wonderful things? So there's so many ways to go about it. If the outcome is employability, this is what I would say to a parent. If the outcome is employability and setting your son or daughter up for the future, then you've got to be open to the name of the university and where you go. So there's so much more to your son or daughter than the piece of paper that they receive. I'm sure most parents would agree with that. And I guess also the name of the university. So student athletes, interestingly, there's an amazing podcast that's sort of doing the rounds a few years ago from the CEO of the Bank of America, who's a former student athlete, rugby player himself in the US. And the article's about CEOs like him right across the US that are first and foremost employing student athletes. Now, they're not employing them out of Harvard necessarily or out of Princeton or out of big name universities. It's the mere fact that they've been a student athlete. That student athlete's got a unique perspective on the world. They've had to demonstrate resilience, time management. They've got a unique perspective that they could bring to any company that makes them incredibly employable and unique. And so, we used to call them pile toppers, I suppose, when it comes to interviews. They're sort of, when employers are going through a list of applicants for a job, staying here in Australia, whilst, as I said, it's a great option, there is a little bit of the sameness about those resumes. So, this young gentleman has gone and competed as a baseballer in the US, and he's gone to this university. He's got a really reputable degree. He's got some work experience. He's done internships. Wow, I think we need to interview him. He's going to have a unique perspective. So I think that's my take on that. As an example, there's a youngster who's just about to complete his first year right now, a very, very bright student who went to let's call it an elite high school here in Australia and performed, in the top 1% of, in the nation as a student. He's gone to a university he'd never heard of over there. It turns out through all of his research and his achievements over there that there is a collaboration with an Ivy League for him to finish off his degree. So he's going to come out with, he's going to have the best of both worlds there. He's going to have that name university on his transcripts and his results. But to get that, he's actually gone to let's call it a no name or a lesser name university. So the outcome is no different for him. Claire, you've got some to add, I know.
Yeah. So I find this whole entire conversation subject really, really interesting as someone having grown up in the US. I think it's fascinating what people decide is a name and a no name. And one of the things I actually like to talk about is a interesting thing I realized with stores like Universal and Cotton On here in Australia. They produce US merch, but it seems like they're really only producing merch from massive, massive 80,000 size campus schools. So I see lots of different merch of kids walking around in Australia of schools that are massive that lots of people have heard of. And it seems to be usually about the same 10 to 15. So you'll have the Ivy League schools and then you'll have the same 10 to 15, usually Division One schools.
Yeah, UCLA's, Cal Berkeley
Yeah.
of the world, Stanford, all the recognizable ones.
Yeah, so that's really interesting to me in itself, because I assume that a lot of people that wear these things have probably seen them through sports. They've seen these schools through sports. So I lived in America for 18 years, and there's hundreds and hundreds of schools I've never ever heard of. That does not mean that it's not a good school. And I think the unfortunate thing that can happen, which I'll talk about more later as well in my parting advice, is people get really caught up with the name of the school. And at the end of the day, what you've heard is not as important about your right fit. So you need to figure out, is this the right fit for you, regardless of what the name of the college is?
Yeah. Do you want to go on this pathway is a question I keep coming back to. I want to have this opportunity to balance my sport, keep coming back to that, and this educational experience. I'm going to grow up over there effectively, set myself up for life. But yeah, the name of the university has, maybe it's a comfort thing for families. It's an identical name that brings a degree of comfort. But for parents in particular out there, I think just very open-minded would be our advice. But again, we'll give you some parting advice at the end, which is going to talk to this a little bit more. But I agree wholeheartedly there, Claire.
And that subject matter came up in a previous podcast with Debbie Shively, and her advice was, having worked at admissions in the US, and for what she sees is, it doesn't matter where you go to college, it's about what you do in college. And that was a big takeaway for me from her podcast as well. Okay, so moving on. This is a scenario that's coming from the parent and the student athlete. So I've done research online on this university and I'm not interested. I've looked at their record, their coaches, their location. I'm still not interested, and I just don't want to waste the coach's time, so I'm not going to pursue it.
So my question to both the parents and the student athlete would be, firstly, have you spoken to the coach yet? Have you spoken to a current player on the team yet? If this university is religious, have you asked the coach and a current student athlete what the religious expectations are of someone on that team? So what I would start to say is, I cannot stress enough how important it is to meet with a coach. There's so much information that's not available on the website, so you can ask the coach. If you see a team had a losing record, for example, you can ask the coach what their plans are for the next year. If the school looks religious and you're not really interested in that, ask the coach about the religious expectations of a player on their team. This is not wasting the coach's time, maybe contrary to popular belief, because this is a part of the college recruiting process for the coach and for the student. If you have any hesitations, address those head on in the call instead of assuming anything. And that's where you have Chris and myself to really help you ask those hard-hitting questions in a very polite way. Maybe the team has had 4 key players get injured, for example, so their record has declined a little bit. Maybe they lost in double overtime by 1 goal or 1 shot or something like that. And it's a very, very close loss, not a 7-0 thrashing or 100-10 thrashing. I would also say maybe the coach has had some personal circumstances happen, or there's been a bit of a restructuring of the athletic department. There's a bunch of different things at stake. So it's really important to talk to the coach. There's always, always, always more than meets the eye.
It's a great point. Talk to the coach. I think we're in an era where, which is certainly different to when I went looking through college, where there was no internet, which I'm really showing my age. But We've got so much information at the tip of our, our fingertips here and at the keyboard, and we can find out anything we need really quickly. And the problem with that in this process is that we make judgments too quickly. So there's 4 forms of research, or 4 steps of research that I recommend in this pathway. So Google would be a distant 4th, by the way, which we rely on. It's a quick answer, and we're making judgments without asking those questions, as you said, Claire, talking to people. So step 1 is talking to a coach. And again, that's not just a simple conversation. That's something we prepare our student athletes for very thoroughly. Make sure we're cleverly crafting or carefully crafting the right questions to get the right answers that's going to help you then decide whether you're going to be interested or not. Don't rely on Google. So talk to the coach. Even after that conversation with the coach, let's go to the next level of research. Sometimes it's to talk to one of the athletes on the team that might be your future teammate. Hey, what's coach really like? What's it really like there? Do you feel safe? What's the religious aspect? What are the expectations of us as a student athlete? And you might just be very pleasantly surprised with that response. And then you've got us as another resource for research. Claire or myself will be able to say, hey, look, this is our view. This is what we know. We've actually had 2 other student athletes go to this university. They're actually, those concerns you have, can be allayed if you talk to them as well. Then by all means do some Google research, but you shouldn't need to. Yeah.
And also making sure, I forgot to add footage. So looking up these programs and watching them play, not just looking at a drone video of a 2-minute flyby of the university, but making sure you're actually looking at the sporting team that you're looking to play for. You're looking at footage, not just one game, not just one small clip, but making sure that you're looking pretty thoroughly at the playing style of your sport instead of just going, oh, that doesn't look like they're very good. It's very important to actually watch the game. And especially if it's a new coach, they've not had the chance to put out footage of them taking over the team and what the team can do now. So that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, good point. Meeting people, talking to coaches. I got burnt once with trying to plan a list of programs to approach for a young golfer. And there's a particular university that is perennially in the top 10. And I noticed they were ranked 85, which again is still a very strong program, by the way. But I had to do some research there, and so Google showed me nothing. But a conversation with the coach one morning sort of confirmed what I thought might be the case, and 3 athletes got some very, just totally coincidental, unfortunate illness/injury, which completely, their 3 best players weren't able to play at the big events. So their ranking slides, and then unfortunately you got people who rely on data and research online. You're going to miss out on an amazing, opportunity at uni as a result. So I think that was probably a good way to finish, talking about that one.
Great. So as a part of this recruiting process, video footage is critical. Okay. So this question pertains to some of the barriers that we can face in getting high quality competitive video footage for our student athletes. So this is a student saying that I haven't been able to work with my coach to help me film, and I don't have anyone else to film me. I can get you some video footage, but it might be in another few months.
So I'll take this one because this is one that I get very frequently with my sports that I work with.
This is your baby, let's say, I would say.
Yeah, I love this one. So just like many things in life, if something is a struggle, get creative. So filming is not up to your coach. They are very busy, usually. This is your coach of the country that you live in. Whether it's your high school coach, your club coach, they have lots going on and you have lots going on. But things that are in your control would be potentially getting a tripod, sticking your phone on your tripod, seeing how you go, trial and error. It could be a parent it could be your parent or maybe a teammate's parent that happens to be filming the game, and you can ask if you can use that footage. I've also heard of lots of people that their club is not filmed ever playing, but the competition that they play against are notorious for filming. So then they contact the coach of the other club that they played, and then they'll ask to potentially get that footage as well. So I cannot stress enough that to, I guess, more so or less blame a coach for being the reason that you can't get footage is not really fair on the coach, because this is your recruiting journey. It's your journey and your future. So I think it's really important to remember that that is in your control. And again, you're more than welcome always to ask Chris and myself of some tips of how you might be able to get around a filming issue.
Yeah, nothing to add there. That you've hit that on the head. That's great advice.
So this is another one from a student where I'm struggling to commit to a US college.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, Claire, you've got some ideas here or responses to that one. So that can be for various reasons. It just maybe confused. They've got so many options, they don't know how to narrow it. And in that instance, we've got a decision-making matrix exercise that I like to walk families through. I won't break it down now, but it generally helps put on paper and verbalize what are the factors I'm considering in making my choice, and then ranking them against the universities that are being shortlisted. And then generally speaking, one will jump out, and that helps. Sometimes, if I reflect back 20-something years ago now to my recruiting process, I was actually struggling with the concept of going at all. I was performing particularly well as a tennis player. Am I too good for this program? Are they going to really help me become the player I want to be? I feel like I'm playing at a better level than maybe what they are. They were my doubts. And so I took a bit of a leap of faith, and thankfully had a couple of Australians on the team who talked me into giving it a shot. And I came over and promptly lost my first 8 matches. Wow. Okay. So you guys are pretty good over here. I thought I was pretty awesome, and, was ranked accordingly right through the juniors here in Australia. But it's Australia. It's a very good tennis country, obviously, but it's a different kettle of fish. You've got people coming from all around the world for an education, but also to test their skills, as an athlete. And that was at the time, I remember calling my parents, asking them to start looking into flights home. This whole college thing sucks. My coach sucks. The climate is to blame, my rackets, everything but me. I think I even blamed my socks or something silly, but just so many things that, when I look back at that was an immaturity for me, and a complete unawareness and blindness to what else was out there outside of my world here in Australia, which was a great world and a world of a lot of success. So, and I'd been people telling me how good I was for so long. So as much as that really hurt, those 7 or 8 losses, it was the best thing for me. And so I think that's an interesting thing. I think if you're struggling because you might think that, I think my level's a little bit too strong for the programs on offer, go and try it. And you know what? If you are too good, dominate, and then you've got options. Dominate and then go out and be a professional if you're good enough to do that, if that's what you want to do, or dominate and then transfer to a bigger, better university is my advice to those people that are struggling with the decision for that reason. I would say that would be my advice. Is there anything else you'd add to that, Claire?
Yeah, so I think I've said this to you off camera a bunch of times, and I think that with student athletes in Australia, you have 26 million people in the entire country. Obviously there's not 26 million people that play your same sport and are your same age, but the sheer number of people that you're competing against for spots in America is enormous. So my state of California had 36 million people when I lived there. And my team, my high school team and my club team were very, very strong in California, which was considered a soccer powerhouse. So we knew that our level of our teams equated to quite a high level in the college system. We are having lots of people on my high school team and club team getting recruited to those top 20 universities to play soccer. However, I understand that here there's not a lot of stuff to compare it to. So I think I said to you at one point, Chris, like I really feel for people here in Australia because they don't have things to compare it to. So sometimes there's no compass or no basis to know where they kind of fit. So sometimes the recruiting process might be a bit eye-opening or maybe a bit shocking or a bit humbling.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really, really do understand why that can be quite difficult. So I think some people might get really disappointed or frustrated or very quickly humbled and decide I might just stay in Australia then. And that's completely fine. But I really think what's important is that you never know until you go and try. So if you feel like you're too good for your offers that you're getting, I felt that way as well. I had some offers that I was like, oh, I'm really not very interested in going here because I actually want to be able to compete and sit on the bench.
Yeah.
That was what I wanted to do. And then other people want to play 90 minutes every game.
Yeah.
So I definitely know that that happens and these conversations happen. But I really want to finish that question in that scenario by saying you don't know until you try. And worst case, you go over, you try it. It's not really for you, but then you've known that you've tried it and you can come back.
Yeah. I feel like you're talking to a 17-year-old me when you say that, because that was the advice I was given. And that's why I went. Come and try it for 3.5 months of your life. That's one semester.
Yeah.
If you love it, stay. If you don't, go home. No one's going to hold you here. So I went there and loved it. And 20-something years later, I'm here telling everyone else, you got to give this a shot. So I agree. My biggest fear when we started studying Play USA is that people don't know about it. So we want to educate people that this is an option. We want to educate people that they're good enough to go. That's my second fear, that the biggest fear is we get approached by 21-year-olds who come out, they've started university here and they go, I want to go try college, can I? And the answer normally is no, because you're in a certain stage where your eligibility is now compromised because of the timeline. So I hate that, because they've missed out on this opportunity. So you've got a window, take it. There's nothing to lose. If you're worried about losing opportunities in Australia, university, you can accept into your course here and defer. Go and give it that one semester that Claire talked about. If it works out, happy days, keep on going. If not, come home.
Yeah.
So to me, it's so simple when you put it that way, but I think you're right. The compass is the issue there for kids. But yeah.
I would also add quickly as well, what I've also kind of heard throughout this experience, which is very fascinating to me, is if a kid is not getting an Ivy League or Division I interest, I've heard families say, oh, we'll just stay here then. But to me, that's fascinating, because there's wonderful, wonderful universities in Australia, and there's fabulous, amazing universities in America as well. So again, you don't know until you try. And yeah, I think it's just hard to look back and have regrets and be like, oh, what would that have been like? Instead of going over and going, yep, I tried it, didn't really work, or I didn't really want to transfer, or I was really happy to come back and continue with my course in Australia.
Yeah.
So to wrap up this session, guys, I want to ask you both, what is your parting advice to our listeners? What are the takeaways that you want them to hold on to after listening to this? Chris, I'm going to go with you first.
Take charge. I think Claire used the word get creative. I think what really that is code for is take charge. No, don't rely on anyone else to make this happen. Some people hope to become a better athlete, but don't hope, make it happen. Go do the extra work. It's the same here. If you want to get an A in class, go seek help from your teachers. If you want to do well on this pathway, we are here. That's why families pay us to do what we do. We love it. We love helping. Use us. We're a pretty valuable resource. We've been doing this a heck of a long time. We've all got different perspectives from our own experiences as students ourselves and athletes. So Utilize the help, but go and make things happen. Take charge was my first bit of advice. Being open-minded comes back to a lot of the topics we've talked about here. Open-minded to where you go, which division you might enter into, which part of America you might go to. Be open-minded and be guided by the right kind of research, to summarize our earlier points. And, I suppose just get into the system and you will figure it out. It's never ceases to amaze me with every one of our athletes who's graduated over there, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds now. Many of them have had these questions that have been asked today at some point, and now they go there and all of their doubts were answered probably somewhere in their first year, and they realize that, okay, now I've figured it out. I've been here a little while. Oh, now I get it. Now I see it. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to save you that year. Find out this information now. Trust it. Trust the process. Trust that. Keep coming back to what is it when you first decided to have a meeting with us or look into this? What is it that attracts me to America? And let that be your guide, rather than getting distracted about all these things like which college, which state, and those types of things. I'm very passionate about that because, again, I'm living proof of it. That's me, but that's a long time ago. But we have seen hundreds of kids who've had these exact questions who have since, shared with us, oh, wow, now we get it. Now that we're here. But very few understand it without going. You have to give it a shot, coming back to Claire's advice. That's me. What about you, Claire?
Mine too. I'm very passionate about these two last ones. One of them is, just because you've never heard of a uni doesn't mean it's bad. I want to make that into a bumper sticker. And
it's a big sticker, but
yeah,
it's a fair one. It's a fair one.
And the other one that I have is focus on what's important to you and your family, not the background noise of everyone else. And I say that from experience. When I went through my recruiting journey in the US, I could not believe how many people had so many strong opinions about where I should go. Some people who had never even played soccer, some people who had never been to an NCAA game ever, some people who had never played literally a sport in their entire life, and they were just basing it off rankings of academics or rankings of what state they deemed to be the most desirable to go to. I could not believe how many people wanted to insert their opinion. And that was in the US. So again, here, same thing. I've seen people have lots of opinions. And I think the most important piece of advice is pretend you're in a cave and you're making a decision about your future, and it's just you. You get to decide what you think is important. And I don't think that you need to justify your decisions to anyone. I think that's very, very important. If you decide you want to go somewhere, that's your decision. You do what's best for you, and it doesn't matter what other people think.